Hi, my name's Mike Morrison. I'm an inventor. I've been developing technology for about 20 years and I've developed a number of composting techniques. I live in this beautiful environment in the Yarra Valley in Launching Place, and I've just taken my kitchen scraps from out of the kitchen and I'm now just going to take them down and put them into the Biofuelcell, and then I'm going to teach you how to grow some lovely zucchini in a garden plot and show you a whole lot of really clever little tips about how to use copper to stop snails and how to improve the watering conditions of your garden. So as you can see, this is our garden here. It's all raised garden beds just to make it a bit more convenient for us. And I'm just carrying out my compost down to the Biofuelcell. I'm going to show you some compost that has been brewing for about 2 months. Now this compost has been brewing away now for about 2.5 months, and I've been slowly filling it up with kitchen scraps. So I'm now ready to make a lovely new garden bed using this material. So you can see how simple it was to lift off the Biofuelcell, and we've got the bio fork here, and you can actually see the worms are starting to go into that material and they're really having a feast. Now that material isn't fully broken down yet, but can you see those worms in there? They are really getting in and having a wonderful time. So we've just come out of winter now and I've started my summer zucchinis. Those have only been in the ground for about 2.5–3 weeks. And what I'm going to do is show you how to get to that stage. So what I'm doing here is I've got my Biofuelcell. It's only been made for a couple of months, a few weeks, and probably about 6 or 7 weeks. So what I'm going to do now is I cover my garden bed with bark and with wood chips. What I'm doing is scraping that away. And the reason I use anything I can get my hands on to cover the soil, you've got to scrape all that material back so that you don't have any wood chip left in the bottom, because it absorbs nitrogen. So you scrape back to the soil, and you can see here how lovely this soil is because it gets fed with compost all the time. So there's worms in there. It's very rich. And this is because I do this type of garden system continually year after year. So I'm taking all the goodness from my kitchen scraps and I'm making it into this beautiful soil. So now this material is not fully matured, but even in that state, that's material that you can see the worms that are in there feasting away. And all I'm going to do is retrieve my breathing devices, and I'm just going to push this material down onto there, and I'm going to pull the next layer of this across. And even though that's only partially broken down, zucchinis and pumpkin like the material when it's very raw like this. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting this down as a nutrient loading in the bottom of the bed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover that with the lawn clippings that we made. So you remember the material that we made with the lawn clippings? I'm now going to put that on top so you can see this beautiful rich material. It's just made from lawn clippings and coffee grounds, and this is full of worms. So this is material I made in the Biofuelcell. So now in this plot I'll be able to grow about 3 or 4 zucchini, and you can see how dark and how rich and beautiful that compost from the lawn clippings is. And now I'm just going to spread all my wood chips back over the pile. Before I do that, I'm going to put a pipe down into the centre. Almost forgot to do this. It's very important to do this. You need to put a pipe down into the centre, and you need to bury it down about 6 or 8 inches. And you bury it down and put a lid on it, because the snails will want to come and live in this pipe. So we've got a plain tube with an open end, and we're just burying that down into the ground, and we're packing the soil around it. And when we water the plant, we're going to fill that tube with water, and that water is going to soak down into the root zone of the plants. So now I'm just going to put some wood chips all over the top of that. Stop it from drying out. And then all we're going to do is open back the wood chip, find some of that lawn clippings, and we're going to take our plants out, and we're just going to plant our plants in there. And that lawn clipping is very, very rich and wet. So I'm planting 2 in this pile. I could possibly plant another 2 in there, but I think what we'll do is we'll just plant 2 of them, because that'll be enough. We've got a lot of zucchini coming off that, and we've got cucumbers. That's another mound there that we've made. Same way, we used another pile of material. So when it comes time to water, I'm just going to pour the water in there. So what I do to prevent any snails eating the young plants, I actually put a copper ring around them, and the snails won't go over copper. And I collect all the old copper pipe I can get my hands on, or heavy gauge copper wire, anything like that. And the other thing I do is I save some old pots, and for the first 2 or 3 days of planting I put the pot over the top of the plant, because the plant won't die, and this gives the plant time while it's adjusting to the roots establishing themselves in the soil. It saves the strain from the heat of the sun coming down on them. In this area we get very hot weather, and so that will protect, and so in 2 days time I'll just come and take those off, and they will be very lush and they won't go through any shock of being transplanted. So I'll just give them a little drink of water, and I'll fill this with water. About every 3 to 4 days I'll fill that with water and keep that well watered, and that's going to keep the biology of the soil around the area very well, and that's why those plants are looking so lush, because they're well watered. Now this is the new Biofuelcell, and it's just attached with Velcro, so it's very, very easy to operate. It's just a sheet like that, and what we do is we just make it into a square, bring it together and clip it together, and there we have it. We place it on the ground, just make a space for it, and you actually use your Biofuelcell in the garden itself. So we've got little flaps on the bottom, we fold those in, and they prevent the Biofuelcell from blowing over. And we place our first breathing pipe underneath, and we've got our breathing pipe which has got the aeration going in. We place that on the ground so that the air can flow in underneath the material. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our kitchen scraps, and we're just going to place our kitchen scraps on top of that, and we spread it out with the biofork. And what we're going to do is take some of those lovely coffee grounds that we collected from the coffee stall, and we're going to sprinkle that on top. If you've got some wood shavings, it's a good idea to use some wood shavings as well. And then as you saw when we were making the lawn clippings, we only used the plastic sheets with the holes in them to do the lawn clippings, because we want that to work very fast. We want to save the water. But when we're doing kitchen scraps, we use cardboard dividers. So we put a cardboard divider on top of the kitchen scraps, and then we're going to fill it again with the next load of kitchen scraps and coffee grounds, and we're going to put another divider on the plate. Continue filling it and filling it right up until the bin is completely filled, and it'll keep sinking down and making more room on the top. And after each layer we're going to put the plastic lid back on top, and that will just sink down with the material as it sinks down and keep more heat in and keep more moisture. So you can see now that this is our persimmon tree, and it's absolutely smothered in fruit, and the leaves are a beautiful big size. Now this tree wasn't doing terribly well last year. It actually had very small fruit and the leaves were a bit stunted. So what we did was we took the Biofuelcell and we put it right underneath the tree. And as you've seen how those worms were coming in, and we've been filling this up with weeds from the garden and kitchen scraps. And what we do then, as soon as it's full, we just cover it over, put the top on, and we leave it. Now that'll be left for about 4 months, and that will have all turned into soil, and that will have continued to feed the plant. And what I also do is with these trees, I put one of those pipes in that I showed you, so that we can water the plant and we can water deep down into the roots. And that's why this plant is now so vigorous. And if I keep the water up to it, we'll have very large fruit, fully ripened. So now when we're growing tomatoes, there's a couple of little tricks. One of the things is that we grow the tomatoes on these trellises, and we're actually able to grow the tomatoes about 20 or 30 feet just by training them around the vine. So what we've been doing is pulling them back down and then tying them. I've got one going in this direction and I've got one going in that direction. So we just keep pulling the vines back down so that they go round, and then I prune out all the extra laterals, but I wait until they get a couple of fruit on them like that one has, and then I take the tip out of it, and that fruit, the plant won't grow anymore, but it'll have a big bunch of extra fruit there. So you can let a few of these laterals, some of them you can take out, you just prune them out, and that way the plant will continue growing around and you'll get a huge amount of fruit off it. But the other thing I've done is I've put my water pipe right at the root of the plant. If you can see in there, there's my watering plant. So I'll just go and get the hose now and we'll water that. And as you can see, the stems on these plants are very, very round. They're really thick, and we're going to have a huge amount of very well formed fruit because they'll never run out of water. And I just fill those tubes to the top. These plants have only been in for about 5 weeks. And they're really starting to get some growth on now. We'll have fruit on those. Some of the smaller varieties of tomatoes we've already got fruit. And we've got basil in the back there that's being well fed from underneath. So all we have to do is fill those tubes up with water. And that's conserving the water because it's sending the water right down to the bottom. And as you can see, we used copper rings around these plants, and they help to prevent the snails from eating the leaves. And you put quite a lot of water in there, and it actually, you only need to do this once a week or once every 3 or 4 days, and that will hold a reserve of water, and it'll cause the deep roots to go down very deep. So previously we showed you how we made the lawn clippings into this compost, and the worms love it. So after the worms have been living in it for a while, they've actually left their droppings in there. And what you can do is you can take this material, we get an ordinary fish tank pump, and we get the little aerators, and we put them in the bottom of the tank, make them go right down to the bottom. We pour in a few tablespoons of molasses, and then we take our lawn clippings and we can put this in either in a stocking, or if we're not going to strain it and we're just going to pour it on the plants, we just place that in there and leave it in there for about 3 or 4 days. And what will happen is all those microbes and bacteria that were in there, they'll feed on the sugar, and the aerobic bacteria will grow in numbers. And then what we do is make that into a spray, and we put it in a spray pack and we spray it all over the plant. The lawn clippings are also quite sweet smelling. They're not terribly offensive. It's quite nice after it's been composted for a while. So we basically just break that up and put it into there. And with that bubbling away for the next couple of days, just about 3 or 4 days is enough. And then we can strain that, or we can put that in a stocking when we put it in so it doesn't mix, and then we can put it in a spray pack. So once we've made the tea, we put it in a spray pack, fairly weak solution, and you make sure that it's clean water. You don't use tap water that's got chlorine in it. If you've got chlorine, you leave it run for 2 or 3 days, let the air bubbles push the chlorine out, but you put it into a tank of fresh rainwater, and then you can spray the whole of the plant. You can spray underneath the leaves, on top, and that will make the plants very robust, and you'll find that the insects won't chew their way through the leaves. The plants get very, very healthy. You can spray it on mature plants. You can never overdo it. You can't spray it too often. But I would give this once a week or thereabouts. And spray it with quite coarse nozzle, and spray it in the afternoon or the morning. You want it to stick on the plant.